Welcome everyone, it's 𝗵𝗃𝗲 from 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗄. I've got Joe Jackson with me. Welcome, Joe. How are you?
Hi. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you for...
I'm good, thank you.
So this is a part of our Women's Empowerment series around using your voice and visibility, and I connected with Joe, I'm going to say about 2 months ago now, and just talked about the series, and Joe just jumped on board straight away, so I'm grateful for that. And
anytime.
And you're quite sort of inspired about let's again, that empowerment, especially women around using their voice and visibility was quite important. So again, thank you for jumping on board and being a part of this. So just by way of introduction, so Joe's a certified executive coach and professional performance coach at Inner Monologue is the professional performance coaching. So to me, that's inner voice. So it'd be interesting to learn a bit more about that. And what I did like about LinkedIn, because I was doing the stalking bit, was when you were with AMP, we were doing work around the human-centered decision making, and I thought, wow, a corporate actually using those sort of words, I found fascinating. So it'd be interesting to learn.
Yeah, it's a bit of a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. What I thought we might do, but is just get to know Joe a bit better personally. So do you want to just sort of share a bit about you, and then we can go into sort of women's empowerment?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I run my own business, and as you mentioned, I'm a high performance coach, and I work with executives and professionals to be able to help them understand the power of their potential and to step into that next level. A lot of us don't actually realize how easy it can be, and it's just about having some intention and some planning to be able to use consistency to do something more. I'm a single mum. I have 2 children, an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, girl and boy. And my little guy is just amazing. He is ridiculously smart and keeps me on my toes. I'm always researching new things on how to keep him interested and how to keep him to what he's an adult if we could survive childhood.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm interested, we spoke earlier, and I again saw you at a presentation, you talked about your sort of corporate career, and there'll be some learnings for young women in regard to maybe your journey there, and again you shared some personal things in that regard. So wondering whether we might sort of talk a bit more about your corporate career and what sort of happened in 2018 and hence the sort of shift or the pivot, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a really poignant stage of my life, and it was really that stage where I elevated into something else, but it could have turned out to be quite different. A couple of years prior to that, I found myself becoming a single parent, and as a result of that, I had needs to meet, financial primarily. The world doesn't stop just because there's one person paying the bills, not two. So I committed to myself that the life that my children and I had led was not going to change. And as a result of that, I ended up taking on more and more work, and I was doing more contract work, and I thought I was okay, and went to a holiday to my sister's place in Perth in Christmas that year and was still okay. I didn't see anything wrong with how I was. I was just tired, as I kept saying to her, I'm just tired. I've been working a lot. I just need to sleep and rest a bit and I'll be fine, because that's what I'd always done. My mentality has always been just get it done. And that really got me through those couple of years. What I didn't realize was my body was breaking down. I had no clue of how sick I was. And when I landed back in Sydney, it hit me. I had severe migraines. I had intense body pain to the point where it was excruciating. And I ended up in hospital. And I walked myself into the triage room after the GP had ordered me to go to hospital immediately. And I said to them, I'm just dehydrated. I can't keep fluids down. I'm sure it's nothing. I've got a headache. I can't stand the light, which is why I've got sunglasses on. I just need to sleep and have no noise and just give me whatever I need so I can go back home. They took my blood pressure and they came running out with the crash cart. I usually have a pretty low resting heart rate because I'm quite fit. Yeah. Well, it was in the very low 40s, and they thought I was going to go into cardiac arrest.
Wow.
So needless to say, I didn't leave hospital that day. My blood pressure was so low that I was actually at risk, and was triaged and had a RAF sent to the Westmead Hospital and spending 8 days in isolation.
Wow.
The
Wow.
hematology ward, where they took countless amount of blood from me, didn't know what was wrong. I had lumbar punctures, all sorts of stuff. And finally, after 5 days, they contracted a virus some months earlier, and my body had been fighting it off and I didn't know. My neutrophils were barely measurable, to the point where I did finally get out of the hospital, and I had to beg the doctors and prescribe to a complete rest program and tell them how well I was going to behave for them to let me go home, because my neutrophil level had not gotten back to the point yet where it was safe for me to leave. The biggest thing in that situation wasn't that I was at risk per se of causing some kind of infection. Clearly, if someone with a cold sneezes on you right now, your immune system is so shot it will not be able to. The irony of that situation is I didn't even know that I was sick. I had no idea how sick I was. And if I had not listened to the GP that day, then I don't know what would have happened.
And were you in the corporate world at that stage when that happened, or?
Yes, yes, yeah. I was.
Yeah. And that's interesting. What I'm hearing anyway is that you, again, just have that tenacity to keep going and, you know, not put yourself first, which I see a lot of. in regard to,
yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and I think that's a good learning where you can be in that corporate world, but again, you've got to really listen to your body. Your body's telling your story.
Yes, I completely agree. I've been pushing myself for so many years by doing study and parenting and working full time and exercising and everything else. It became my normal. I didn't even realize when I ramped it up even more that I was actually in a very dangerous threshold. Thankfully, I've learned from that. The first thing I did when I came out of hospital was look at the way I do things and reevaluate who actually should be first in my life. And I know that in order for my family to survive, I have to be first. So I re-engineered everything that I do around the premise of I need to look after me first to look after everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. I think the analogy of the airplane when the bags come down.
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
So I'd be interested, because you do a lot of that sort of coaching, so executive coaching, and I'm going to more, I suppose, lean into the women's space around the executive coaching. What are you sort of finding with women, or what are why they come into you, or what are they learning? I'm big on, I suppose, women being authentic leaders, and women are amazing leaders as long as they trust themselves and be the leaders that they truly are. But I'd really be interested in what you sort of see, or you know, one or two stories around, you know, the impact of women that you've been coaching.
Things I consistently see is women coming into training sessions and coaching sessions that have a mentality of, I know I have a lot to offer, but I don't know how to offer it, because they've gone through various experiences throughout the course of their lives, and those experiences have not been great. So because of that, they've decided to do what Tony Robbins refers to as playing small, and it's doing enough to get by. Thankfully, there's been quite a revolution in the last 10 years with regards to equality, especially in the workplace, and gender equality specifically. And as a result of that, we've seen a rise of women leaders in the organization. I personally think this is actually quite important, to have a balance between the feminine and the masculine in an organization, not necessarily by gender, but more by type. And the reason for that is each brings something important into any organization and culture. But the women that typically come to me are women that have gone through major life changes. So a divorce, or they've lost their partner, or they've lost a child, or they've lost a long-term career. I call it the Gen X lie. We're all told as Gen Xers, as women especially, get a nice man who's got the good job, that pays well, have the 2.4 kids, have the white picket fence, and you'll go overseas once a year, everything will be fine. That's what you should aspire to. And many of us, we bought that. And then the world changed. We were told that if you got a good job, then it wasn't too good, but good enough, that would be great and that would do. But then you get a good job and the world shifts and you get into your late 40s and in some cases mid 50s, where if they're being made redundant, as is very common now, it's really hard to get another job. So they're fearful of their careers being over. And a lot of these women wrap their identity up in two factors in their lives. Often it's their children and their career. And if their children have moved out because they're old enough to go on their own now, or they've headed off to uni, she's left with her career. And then if her career is not there anymore because of redundancy or otherwise, then she's left with nothing. And she needs to rebuild herself from the inside out. And that can.
Yeah, and I think what I see sometimes is women now sort of finding their purpose. I think COVID sort of created that to a certain degree where people have been they're slowed down. They've been quieter. I talked with a number of women that were either in the corporate world who have sort of gone out and doing their own things, and mainly because they want to follow their passion. And it's scary at the same time to leave a safe environment per se. Well, how safe is it with people losing their jobs? But a safer environment.
Yeah, more than ever.
So have you seen sort of people with that? Are you supporting sort of women around, even not so much the redundancy side, but sort of leaving that corporate space, doing their own thing, building their own future, their own dreams?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of clients at the moment that are actually moving into coaching themselves. And the reason they're looking at doing that is because they realize that they've got skills that are useful and they want to be able to serve other people, and they want to share their experiences so that other women don't have the same difficult times that they had in their lives. So that's very common at the moment for me to come across. It's not like it used to be. Women usually had one, maybe two roles in their life, and that was wife and mother. It's come a long way since then, and it's not uncommon for women to change their vocation, to change their purpose based on how they're feeling and what their direction is at the time, especially after a major life event. So this is actually becoming more and more prevalent.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you coach a number of women and have been for some time, and you've got the history in the corporate world. So what would you tell a 25-year-old Jo Jackson in regard to who's hungry to sort of get ahead but wants to be authentic, doesn't want to change their style in a potentially male-dominated industry per se? What sort of advice would you give that 25-year-old sort of?
Incidentally, 25-year-old Jo Jackson did get given some advice from a very well-meaning manager. It stuck with me this whole time. And the piece of advice was this, ironically, completely contradictory to how I'd been brought up. And the piece of advice was this: if you can't get along with somebody, it's not because of them, it's because of you.
Wow.
So that was really strong advice for me, because at that point in time, 25-year-old confident Jo Jackson was a very high D on the DISC scale, and I had no problem telling anybody when I thought they were wrong. Thankfully, I've become more aware of my style, and I've gone into significant changes for that, somewhat due to age. But that advice was crucial for me, because up until then, I was of the opinion that, well, if they don't get along with me and I'm trying to get along with them, then that's their problem, not mine. So it really turned the tables for me. I think now, in the age of HP, where we're constantly talking about philosophy and we're talking about how we work internally as a human being, chemically, biochemically, all those elements internally, it's really important for us to understand that just because we have an opinion doesn't mean that we should air it. And we should really go back to the 80-20 rule. Listen 80% of the time and talk for 20% of it, because all of the people that I know that are great learners, that are great game changers and thought leaders, listen more than they speak.
Yeah. And it's almost humbling when you say that saying resonated with me, really importantly around, it's not about them, look at yourself. And wow, great advice.
That's been the base. It's great advice. And I reflect on that daily. I like to say now, one of my favorite sayings is, I have an intimate relationship with reality. And that means that I reflect constantly on things that are not going right in my life, not to analyze them to the point where I find out what I've done wrong, but to look at them from as many different directions as I can possibly fathom at that point in time, and try and consider all options and perspectives within that. And that's where the learning is, and that's where you transcend from where you were to where you can be.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. And I'm going to put you on the spot, and I haven't asked you this, so hopefully it's all right. So there's a young woman that is looking there, is inspired by our interview and some of the things that you sort of shared with us. They're in the professional corporate world there. Is there an opportunity for them to connect with you and sort of sound you out to see whether there's a match in regard to either mentoring or working with you?
They resonate with what I'm saying. I'm a firm believer in not transforming but transcending. I have just signed up with 𝗵𝘃𝗲𝗄 to do a course on psychology and flow, and how we can utilize flow to maximize our time and our life. So I'm very excited about getting involved with that. For anybody is to not accept the status quo within your own life, and not get used to that hedonic adaptation where it just becomes the norm, and you don't seek the highs and you don't manage the lows. Instead, always take the risk and give it a shot, because from my perspective, even if it doesn't go according to plan, there's always something in it for you.
Yeah, there's always a learning. Yeah,
absolutely.
So thank you so much, Jo, for being a part of the series. And I've learned something. I learn something all the time. So again, I've learned something today. So I really appreciate your time. It's so valuable. And as I said, for young women to actually look at inspiring people such as yourself and learn and actually, take away a little bit to sort of create that change that might be holding them back a bit. So thank you very much for being a part of it.
Thanks so much, Michael. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. All the best. Bye.